Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Groover. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another fabulous episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I am your co-host, Kathy Groover.
And I'm Jason Mefford. And today we figured, since we've had another amazing 25 episodes, that it would be it would be an amazing opportunity. Amazing to kind of go through and give you a recap on what we've talked about in the last 25 episodes.
We have learned so much, and we had so many incredible guests these past couple episodes, and we thought, we always talk off the air about how much we've learned and how we can geek out and nerd out on things. So we thought, if you didn't get a chance to listen to all of them, or if you did and you just want a little amuse-bouche of each episode, we can give you a little update, a little
amuse-bouche.
Amuse-bouche.
Oh, that's right. Great word.
Foodie.
Well, and because like you said, some people may have joined us later on. And so this can give you, an idea of oh, hey, that sounds like a cool episode. You can always go back and listen to the whole thing as well. So
absolutely. And it's funny because I edit all the episodes, so I get to not only experience them like this, but I also get to watch them again. And then once they publish, I watch them again. Maybe I'm just an only child and I like watching myself. That could be. But I get so much from it. And I've got notebooks full of notes. And we had a phenomenal guest called Mike Mandel, who we'll talk about in a second. But I literally went and bought every book he recommended to take on my trip. So it's like this is the fun thing about doing this is we get to learn so much too. So whereas last we left off, we had done our episode 26 was the first 25 episodes. So the 27th episode was with phenomenal Sarah Caputo, who we had actually had on in our first 25 episodes too. She's an organizational psychologist. She did amazing stuff. And she talked about the triangle and putting yourself at the top of that productivity triangle. And then also about being in the weeds. It's not about smoking pot. What's about being in the weeds, Jason?
Well, it's about actually doing and getting down too far in the details in your business. And, a lot of people might talk about things like your creative genius. And if you're in the weeds, you're doing all the little administrative day-to-day kind of stuff and not really contributing or in your creative genius zone, right? And I know that was a big wake-up episode for me because I do most of the stuff in my business, right? And so I am too much in the weeds a lot of times, and it's actually encouraged me that and some other stuff to actually hire some people to help out and to try to get out of the weeds and spend a lot more time in my creative genius zone, which is actually creating content,
right?
And developing relationships and coaching people.
Absolutely. And that's such a good point because sometimes, well, at least for me, I know sometimes it's easier to stay in the weeds. It's easier to, futz around my office and organize my little things and do this piddly little shit rather than actually taking a big chunk of that huge thing that I keep saying I want to do, whether it's the online course or whether it's doing that mass mailing. I mean, I can't tell you how long I fought doing my newsletter this past month. It took me a half an hour, but I kept resisting. I didn't feel like doing it. I didn't want to do it. And finally, it was the only thing left on my list. I mean, I organized my sock drawer. I played with the cat. I mean, I got the most ridiculous stuff done, which made me feel so accomplished. And I still hadn't done that one big thing that I knew I had to do. It took me like less than a half an hour to do it. And it was just about getting out of the weeds, getting out of that muck and that mire of this little piddly shit that you kind of have to do, but can you bring someone else in to do that thing? And so it was really about prioritizing and putting those important things at the top of that list. So she was an amazing guest. She was fabulous. I learned so much from her. And she's a local Santa Barbarian, so that was fun.
Yes. Well, and I think too, you'll see as we're talking about this, how all these topics really kind of go together in a lot of ways, right? Because, to me, this also goes back to the be, do, have kind of thing. And if we are being the person that we are supposed to be, then we shouldn't find ourselves in the weeds, so I have to keep kind of reminding myself and slap myself around a little bit. And it's like, would the CEO of a company do that? No, then I probably shouldn't be doing that, right? I should be having someone else help and get out of those weeds themselves. And the more that you get out of the weeds, the more you are actually being that person you need to be. So.
Yeah. And I actually brought somebody in, sort of a virtual assistant kind of person, which I never trusted.
Mhm.
I have a huge, that's one of those, you're not going to do it right. It's going to be a nightmare. And I have to admit, I went through 3 people helping me before I finally found one that was actually doing the job for me. The first
Mhm.
2 just didn't do anything. And now,
Mhm.
granted, these were people I knew. I put a call out on Facebook and said, hey, who can help me with this online stuff? And like 5 people messaged me and said, oh, I really want to help. So I grabbed the first one who I knew. She totally blew me off. The second one started going through a divorce and he lost his mind, so he couldn't help me. And I'm like, and I was really frustrated because I was like, oh my God, I finally put it out there that I need help. And this was my night. This was my scary moment of, I was right. These people can't help me. But I had to reframe that and be like, look, you just haven't found the right person. Like, it doesn't mean nobody in the world can help you. It means that you just picked poorly those first 2 times. Maybe it's not right to pick that person you went to high school with. Maybe you should actually get a virtual assistant, so it was that lesson of just because you know them doesn't mean they're going to do a good job for you. So be patient, make good choices, and be very clear in what you want. Because I didn't give them a time thing. I'm like, hey, can you do this thing? And it was just very loose, and I didn't direct them as much as I could have, should have. And so
Mhm.
now when I got to the third person, I'm like, look, I need to have this done by this. This is what has to happen. This is what I want you to do. If you see you can't do it,
Let me know.
tell me.
Yeah.
You cannot devote at least an hour a day to doing this. Tell me right now. And I hadn't set those parameters before. So that was my little lesson in trying to get stuff done. So we can, yeah. All right. So we left Sarah Caputo and we went to smoke breaks.
Oh, yes.
Are we advocating smoking, Jason?
No, but actually it's funny because, I'd heard this before, and actually after we did the episode, I've heard it from several other people too, that, sitting is the new smoking. And they've actually said that term. The fact that so much of the time we end up chaining ourselves to our desks, we don't get up,
Yeah.
and actually sitting all day uh, may actually be more damaging to your health than smoking. And so the whole idea that, in the old days, everybody used to go take a smoke break every hour or two, and they'd get up and they'd walk around and they'd talk to their coworkers. And, a lot of times we've kind of gotten out of that, and we really need to get back to that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the smoking, right? But the, the interactions with other people, the taking breaks, because you're much more productive if you work, in bursts of 20, 40, 50 minutes. But usually you need to get up and kind of change position, move around, do something
Absolutely.
after 50 minutes.
Yeah. And we talked about concentrating, and you can only concentrate on things for so long before you have to decentrate. And we never talk about that, but that pendulum has to swing. You cannot be in full concentration for 8 hours without moving. Now, I understand. I have friends who are programmers who literally, once they get in that zone, they get in that language, they do just tear through and do it. But they do that once a month. They're not doing that every day for 8 hours. And then I see their shoulders are out of whack and their hand hurts from the mouse. And, please, please, please get up and move.
I know, and that's my note to myself today, because yesterday I probably didn't move as much as I needed to, and I can feel it in my shoulders today.
Yep. That's the joy of being a massage therapist.
Yes.
I don't sit still. And then I go to dance class and trapeze. So my problem is sit still.
You don't sit still enough. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So it's about finding that balance and what works for you. Remember, this is all what works for you. This is not a blanket statement. All right. So we're all going to take up smoking. No.
We're going to take breaks. We're going to take breaks.
No, right. Yeah. Crap. Okay. I was ready. I had my Camel lights. Okay. And then we talked about James Hazelrig and stories. Oh, that was such a fun episode.
Yeah. I mean, because it brings up, because he uses stories in hypnosis, right?
Yes.
But I think we kind of got off on the tangent too, that the whole idea is everything is a story, right? I mean, everything that happens, we're placing some sort of meaning on it. We're creating a story out of these things. And hey, if you want your story to end differently, then change the ending. Yeah. We have control. We're the author of our life, and we have the choice to actually write the ending that we want.
Yeah. And also people relate through stories. And I know when I do my talks, and I know you do this as well, it's like I relate personal stories and I can stand up there and go, stress is bad, blah, blah, blah. Or I can tell them this captivating and meandering story about how I got trapped in the UK because my tire blew and no one came and helped me. You know, that became my signature story for my stress talk, is about being in this present moment. And it is through those stories. I mean, that is what the oldest medium of entertainment is, that verbal telling of stories. And it's not only about sharing our stories with others to help them learn lessons, but you're right, what is that story we're telling ourselves about who we are and about I'm a failure and I'm terrible? Are we perpetuating that negative story? Or can we take that story and, like you said, change that ending to move forward in a different way and be a completely different person? And we've talked about that and around that with so many different guests, about the ego states and about Snow White and about changing who you are and what that story is that you want to tell. So I think that was kind of the first episode we really, I think, dove into that, but it's been a theme throughout all of ours, I believe.
Well, yeah, it keeps coming up because I've noticed, again, after we talked with James, I've thought a lot more about it. Other guests that we've talked to have talked a lot more about it. My own personal development, when I'm reading and listening to other podcasts and doing things, a lot more people are talking about it too.
Yeah.
Because it's real,
Yeah.
and again, I mean, a lot of people talk about manifestation. Well, story and changing the ending of your story is part of manifestations. It's not just, sitting here and dreaming it, but it's actually going out and doing it and changing the ending of your story.
And it is to a certain extent about dreaming it, because if you don't know what you want, what do you want? What do you want the ending of that story to be? I mean, you don't just turn on Waze and go, okay. I mean,
you got to put it in a destination.
You have to put it in. Now, how you get to that destination is sometimes up for debate, especially in LA. The 405, oh my God. But, and if you don't know where you're going, you can't program that story. So I think it's really important to know what you want. In fact, the next episode we do is about values.
Yes.
Oh, and ironically that you and I picked pretty much the same 3 values, I think
we were very much in alignment. Yeah.
Yeah. What were they? I don't even remember now.
I don't know.
Fun and humor. Didn't we have fun was one, right?
I had freedom, I think, was one of mine. I'm trying to remember from the list because they were a little bit different from the ones that I have up on my vision board and that I deal with.
But we had 2 that were identical and one that was a synonym.
Mm-hmm.
Cinnamon.
Synonym. I have to go back and look at my notes to figure out what it was exactly.
Welcome to Drunk Fire and Earth. Yeah.
No, but the whole idea with the values, again, like you said, if we're creating our stories, we have to know where we want to go.
Yeah.
And a big guiding light on where that should be is the values that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't know what you value, I mean, knowing those values helps inform your decisions. And I think I told this story in that episode. There was a woman doing a keynote at this big women's conference in LA, and she had this $1 million contract that had come through. But what she had to do for that $1 million contract was on the day of her daughter's wedding. And you could see the audience kind of divided going, and she blew off her daughter's wedding. And her daughter understood that it was her mother's money, and she was a single mom, and her contracts, her all this stuff, that's what allowed the family to survive. And so the daughter was like, you throw me a big reception with that $1 million, you go do your thing, and was totally accepting that her mother chose the wedding over her. Now, not everybody would make that choice. I'm well aware of that. I probably would, because I'm more business focused than relationship. Well, it's hard to say. I don't know. I don't know what I do in that situation. But it is about what are your values, and then you can decide yes or no, depending on what those values are. And if you value fun, autonomy, humor, and adventure, you're probably not going to work for somebody else and sit at a desk. I mean, it's not going to be in alignment with your values. And you can do the values in relationship, in work, and sort of in life in general. And I just thought it was fabulous that you and I were so in alignment with those values, because, we're brother and sister.
Yes.
I agree.
So then we moved on to the Breakfast of Champions, right? So I love that title because, growing up, I used to eat Wheaties and, had that was the Breakfast of Champions, was kind of their tagline for a long time. Plus, it's a great book from Kurt Vonnegut, and he happens to be one of my favorite authors.
Oh,
You didn't know that, did you? Okay.
I
Anyway.
didn't know. I didn't
Yeah,
know either of those two things.
yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Morning.
So, and it, the idea is that, what we do in the morning, and it's not necessarily what you eat. Obviously, that is still important, but having some sort of a morning routine
Mm-hmm.
is actually what champions do. And so, you can look at athletes, you can look
Yeah.
at, successful business people. Every one of them has some sort of morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's usually some similar things that go on, that they're doing. Like, I have yet to, listen to or hear about a successful person that does not do some sort of meditative or reflective practice every single day.
Yep.
I mean, that's just consistent. And
Mm-hmm.
even for world-class athletes, same sort of thing, right? So we kind of talked about some of those things and how, creating and developing your own morning routine can actually help you to become that champion as well.
Exactly. And it's funny because I think I vowed at the end of that episode to really start meditating every day.
Mhm.
I have been meditating every day, every morning.
Yes, high five across the internet. Boom.
That was creepy. It kind of worked. That almost sort of worked a little bit, depending on which way you're.
Which angle? Yeah. Okay.
Whose screen is where. But no, I wake up, I look at my phone, which I know you're not supposed to do, but I do anyway. I don't care. It's my morning routine. And I scroll through to see if there's anything I need to jump out of bed for. If there's a pressing email, and I delete everything, which means I don't have to turn my computer on as quick. And then I lay in bed and I evaluate, okay, what am I going to do? Okay, I have to do the dishes. I need to meditate. I need to return that email. I need to pack for my trip. And I really do sort of my to-do list in my head. Then I get up and I just get to that action and I make sure that every morning, and I'm sure there's one or two that I've missed, but for the most part, I have been on that pillow every morning. And whether it's 2 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes,
Yep.
I realize that grounds me. And I had a house guest and we were rushing around to get out. And I finally said, you know what, I need to meditate for 5 minutes. And she goes, oh, do you need me to leave? And I'm like, you can sit there and watch. I don't care. I'm going to sit in silence for 5 minutes. And she kind of sat in the room too and just meditated with me, which was kind of fun. So, it's about getting into that habit. And now if I don't have time to do it, I kind of go, meditate. I didn't like it as much.
Well, and I can feel a difference, right? Because again, I have kind of certain things that I'm trying to do every day. And I can tell a lot of times in the afternoon when I'm feeling a little flat, a little blah, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to do something this morning. And you can end up kind of telling because, a lot of times people talk about habits as being bad things. Well, good habits are good things, right? And so developing those, trying to stick to them, having integrity with yourself so that you're doing them because you've made a commitment to yourself.
Yep.
It shows up in so many other places in your life too.
Absolutely. And yeah, and I have found if I don't lay in bed and kind of do, okay, I need to do this is what my morning's going to look like. I just sort of wander around my house going, and I feel scattered and nothing gets done. And I do this little piecemeal shit. I'm in the weeds and I'm not actually getting the things done that I know I have to, but I haven't programmed myself for that, So I think that first hour when you wake up, whether it's going for a run or whether it's answering those emails or meditation or playing with the cat or whatever it is, I think that truly is, and what you eat, because I'm big into that too. I really do think that sets up the rest of our day. So yeah, very cool. All right. So we left our morning routine to deal with negative people.
I don't know why you'd want to leave the morning routine to deal with them, but
well, it's the next episode. So
that's right. Yeah. Cause we
do a linear Capricorn. I'm going in order because
there you go.
Can't do it any other way.
Yeah, because we do encounter negative people in our lives, don't we?
Yes. And it's exhausting. And we talked about practical ways to deal with that and setting up boundaries. And I know we've talked about boundaries in so many episodes. And yeah, I mean, that's a pretty self-explanatory episode, dealing with negative people and setting up those boundaries and saying yes or no. And we can arrive at those boundaries a lot from looking at our values. So again, it's all sort of intertwining and weaving into things. So that was a fun episode.
It is. Well, and then next we talked to Brad Dalias.
He was great.
Podcast host. Got Motivators in Motion podcast, right? And just talked a little bit about business, about motivating, about having, his whole idea and purpose kind of behind his was to do a daily motivation, right, for people to be able to help them kind of get motivated every single day.
Yeah.
Is it important for us to get motivated every single day?
What?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
I said, is it important for us to get motivated?
motivated.
Motivated.
Yes, I'm feel very motivated right now, and I should probably go take care
Yeah.
of that at some point. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is some of the unscripted and unedited portion of the Fire and Earth podcast.
The motivated part? Yes.
The motivated. Yeah. Okay.
Emotated is what we could actually do. Emotate. I emotate. I like that. Emotate.
Do you emotate with emoticons?
I would think you probably have to, but I like the little kissy face one because that's what I.
Okay, there we go.
I send that one all the time. Okay. I got a little warm inside. Okay. Speaking of warm inside, we had Peter on, who is one of my dear best friends. Peter Bedard's story is pretty incredible. He was hit by a truck, actually jammed into the back of a semi, if I remember correctly, and died, and watched himself like from away dying. His body was battered and beaten, and he's written now 2 books with one of the offsets of Simon and Schuster, wasn't it? One of their new
Simon and Schuster.
And he's incredible, and he is one of the most just positive healing beings. His energy is just so kind and just pure love. And we talked with him about healing emotionally and how you can take those steps and do a couple, I think is that the one where he led us through the exercise and talked about emotions and healing. And it was just a beautiful episode. And I really encourage you all to listen to that one, because us talking about it is kind of pointless. I mean, it's all about him and his energy and what he imparted to us.
Well, yeah, because we did 2 different episodes with Peter, and I think that's a great way of kind of describing him. Is the word that pops in my mind is kind and loving, as well, and how he really has a desire for people to heal themselves physically, emotionally, everything else, and he's actually gone through that process and really did give some practical tips for how we can actually do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's yeah. I was trying to remember if it was that episode or the other one where we were talking about the affirmations. And
I think it was the other one.
It was the other one, right? Okay. So maybe we'll get to it, or I can't remember if it was before, but where he was getting all excited as he was doing it. And so it's like, all right, I'm going to try that too. And it's like, holy shit, I feel totally different when I do it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I know we haven't talked about this episode yet, but this thing with Mike Mandel, I do that all the time.
Oh, yeah,
and I started doing that even before our episode, but yeah, I've taught that to a couple clients too, and it's been fabulous. We're just teasing on that. All right, so we leave Peter behind to managing emotions and having compassion. Now, this was a rough year for both of us. We both had losses. I left my husband. My dad died. Lost a boyfriend. My best friend just buried her husband at age 50. It's just been, my mother-in-law's in the hospital. It's been a litany of just trying to manage that emotion, having compassion and patience for yourself, because yeah, we're in business, and yes, we have this list of things we want to accomplish, and we're human beings.
Yeah. Well, and as being, as being human beings, we're emotional.
Yeah.
And, a lot of, especially because kind of in my profession, a lot of analytical left brain people, and try to not have emotion at work and other things. So, a lot of the stuff that I teach around emotional intelligence kind of, hits right on it. It's like, because we are emotional, we have to remember that, but we also need to have some compassion for ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we're going through a hard time, sometimes we just need a hug.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to, just kind of stop and remember and be grateful for where we have come. Because I know that was, that way for me, especially at the beginning of the year. As I look back now, I've seen how much I've actually grown emotionally during the year.
Yeah.
All of that hasn't translated into, millions of dollars, in the jet and everything in my business. But, me stopping and being grateful and having compassion for what I have accomplished. Because when I look back, it's like, holy shit, and I think it's that way for both of us. The stuff that we've come through this year and where we're both set up here at the end of the year and for next year.
Yes.
And maybe as a reminder to everybody, sometimes you got to go through some horrible shit before the light comes.
Yeah.
And so, just give yourself compassion, keep pushing through the pain and keep going, because the good stuff is there and you do have a lot to be grateful for.
Absolutely. And take a break if you need it. Right after my dad died, I handled it incredibly well, but there were these moments where this emotion would wash over me. And it's easier when I'm doing massage because I can kind of be in my own space and my body just automatically does it. But I remember I had a hypnosis session scheduled for a client and I was really in a shitty space. Like there was no way I could sit there across from her and give her a good session. And so I messaged her and I said, Kat, I am so sorry I have to do this, but I'm really feeling low today and I am not going to serve you well by coming into the office. Can we reschedule? And she's like, thank you so much. I said, could I have done it? Could I have faked my way through your session and taken your money? Yeah, but what would the point have been for that? And I was very honest with her. I said, I'm just feeling really low. My dad passed, da, 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 da. And what are they going to say? No, come in anyway? I mean, 95% of the people, if not more, are going to have compassion for you, having compassion for yourself. And she's like, thank you for actually rescheduling that. I appreciate that, because I was thinking about her outcomes of how well am I really going to serve her if I'm in this state. Sometimes do we have to push through? Yes. But to the extent that we can, give yourself that break and have compassion for what you're going through. Others will absolutely appreciate that.
Yep. Well, then we moved on to talk about affirmations. Affirmation.
Favorite things.
So what do we learn in that one? Because I think a lot of times, and we made a little reference to the tapping. We'll talk about that later, probably when we get to. Actually, we may not, because Mike might be actually after.
Because we know
the one where we talk about tapping, because we did 2 episodes with Mike.
Mike, we'll tease the tapping.
Yeah, so we've got to figure out the order on that. But it's interesting because I think, again, a lot of times people, they know, right? We know we need to do affirmations, but a lot of times people just kind of go through the motions of it.
Yeah.
And so if I remember right in that episode, some of the things that we talked about are doing some more multisensory kind of stuff.
Yes.
Right? Like I've done a lot of work on multisensory learning, so you can see it, say it, hear it, write it, and that's activating your senses. So you're actually talking or saying them out loud, which seems kind of silly, but you know what? As soon as you get used to it, you're not crazy if you talk to yourself. At least I keep telling myself that, because I talk to myself all the time.
I would have been locked up a long time ago, because that's all I do is talk to myself.
But actually saying them out loud and writing them down.
Yes.
Programs them better in your brain. Literally, it programs it in different parts of your brain. And then some of the other stuff, like what Peter was talking about with even the, you can say, I am kind, wise, and authentic, or you can say, I'm kind, wise, and authentic, right? There's different ways that you can actually say it. And the more emotion you bring into it, and that's where, Mike taught us too about the tapping.
Yep.
There's actually ways that you can use tapping methods.
Yes.
As you're doing it as well, because ultimately the more multisensory your experience is, the more energy you have with it, the more it actually gets into your subconscious as well.
Absolutely. And our brain moves us towards what we know. So if we already feel like we have that thing, then we are going to take steps and it's going to be easier for us to get that thing. So you want to put your affirmations in the present tense. I am fabulous. I signed $1 million contract. And Peter talked about that as well. And I know we talked about sort of cheating. If you say, I have $1 million, if you don't believe that, how you can sneak your way into that. So we'll make you listen to that episode. But the other thing is it went away. Crap. Making them short, positive, in the present moment, repeating them often. What do you want? That's the big, what do you want? You cannot affirm things if you don't know what you want. So the bottom line of pretty much every one of these episodes and your life is, what do you want? It goes back to that. So what are you affirming if you don't know what your actual goal is? And I'm actually working with someone right now on, what do you want and why do you want that thing? And what are those barriers and how can you break through those? And, it's been a fun process to help someone so young really set up their life. And I'm like, why when I was 25 was no one telling me all this? It's like, if I could turn back time. Thanks, Cher.
If I could turn back time.
Anyway.
That's a great song. Anyway.
It is a good song. And then we move into the 5 love languages. This was one of my favorite episodes, actually. Physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, acts of service, and quality time. It's not just about relationship. It's about relationship with yourself and how you can move forward in your business too. So we We had a lot of fun on that one. That was a good
Yeah, I
episode.
kind of took a little twist on that, because again, a lot of people know about the 5 love languages for relationships, and they're very important and helpful in that way. But again, that we can also use that kind of for our self-care as well, right? And so, even the silly example, because I'm a high one for physical touch, and so again, well, if I'm by myself and I feel like I need a hug, and there's nobody around, you can give yourself a hug, and it seems a little
It
silly,
actually does help though.
but it does help. And so, that you can actually apply those to your own self-care. So yeah, great,
Yeah,
great,
very
great little
cool.
way of doing it.
Absolutely. And then we had a phenomenal guest on that was one of the guests you found. Denise was incredible. You know her so much better than I. So, I mean, just give an idea of what she's doing because her project is amazing.
Yeah, so she did a movie and kind of runs what's called Project Inye,
Mm,
which is she's an award-winning filmmaker. So documentary that she put out kind of about her life, and the whole idea of it is it's mainly targeted for people who are their parents came to America, so they're a first
hmm
generation American, and kind of this whole draw between, you're not Latino enough if you
Right.
don't do this, but you're not American enough if you don't do this, and kind of this whole idea of being stuck between two worlds. And so obviously it resonates with her people, but it resonates with all of us, because so
Right.
much of the time we do feel like, well, this is really what I want to do, or this is really who I am, but the world's telling me I have to do this.
Yeah.
And so we do kind of feel stuck between those. And really, one of the best things that we can do is actually be selfish, because when we're selfish and nurture and take care of and grow into who we really are, that's how we accelerate our dreams. That's how we're actually able to serve and help other people.
Yeah.
It's
And I mean,
scary as hell to do it.
well, and I
Right?
was just going to say, I mean, it's like, I'm just a white chick. I was born here. I was raised here. I mean, it's just like, I have no, other than the fact that I'm a woman, which is I guess considered a minority population. I mean, I cannot claim to be a minority in any way, shape, or form, except for the fact that I was horribly bullied and I didn't feel like I fit anywhere. I didn't fit in with the really hyper smart people, even though that's where they put me. I didn't fit in with the jocks. I didn't fit in with the, thank God I found drama club because that became my little tribe of people. And I realized we're all freaks. We're all, misfits. We all belong on the island of misfit toys. And we all have those feelings sometimes. And she's just had this amazing ability to put that into words through the experiences that she's had, and she's helped so many people. And I watched a couple of the trailers of the new movie that she has coming out. I mean, it's incredible. And it spoke to me, even though I am not Latina, I am not a minority, because we've all felt like that. We've all felt like an outcast.
Yeah, no,
I
it's one of
assume.
those, because like you said, yeah, her first movie's out there. You can see it online. Second one they're working on. I know they were working on a deal. So hopefully they've got that all figured out now. Next time I talk to her, I've got to ask her about that. But in watching it, if you take the time to watch it, you will be emotionally affected.
Yeah.
I mean, you just will be. So
Beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. Now we move back to Peter,
yep.
episode 40. Moving back to Peter, and again talking about that's I think when he got excited about the affirmations. We kind of covered that. All right. So where do we talk to? Episode 41. We went to Christina Donaldson. She's one of my best friends. So she's a clinical psychologist. She also teaches at Antioch University here in Santa Barbara, and she was just talking about cognitive flexibility and how emotional health and psychological health is really such a huge issue right now, and how we can all make different choices to be more flexible in how we handle emotional states and how we handle our traumas, dramas, and setbacks. So that was a beautiful episode. I love that.
Yeah, because the whole idea, that cognitive flexibility, I love that term. That a lot of times, she was talking about a lot of the stress and anxiety is caused often because we are not cognitively or critically thinking about maybe what's going on around us. And if we stop and do a little bit of time out, then a lot of that, fear, false expectations appearing real, just kind of go away, because it's like, well, of course that's not what's really going on, right? And having the flexibility in being able to think critically, so that we don't believe a lot of these lies, if you will, that may be out there, or the false story that we're telling ourselves about our present situation, that you can actually flip it and do it differently.
Yeah, because so often we don't, it's not true. And that's one of the things I talk about all the time is, do I know that in my communication workshops? Do I know that to be true? Are you just making assumptions about things, or do you actually have proof that that thing is happening? You didn't say hi to me in the parking lot. You must not like me. You know that to be true. I'm an adult woman, and I had this conversation with a client. Like, are we 13? Like, maybe she never go
I
out.
had something on my mind.
Yeah. She had to pee. Maybe you don't know that unless you sit her down and say, hey, it really hurt my feelings the other day when you didn't wave to me. And the person 9 times out of 10 will go, what? I didn't even see you. It's like, why are we jumping to these conclusions? You do not burn calories jumping to conclusions. So
not like jumping rope.
No, totally different. I can't jump rope. It makes me pee. I don't pee when I jump to conclusions. Okay.
Okay.
Might edit that part out. Okay, and then speaking about jumping to conclusions, we talked with Reagan Myers about conflict, and she works for one of the CVBs, right? Tourism boards.
Yeah.
And we talked about just, conflict in politics and office politics and how to navigate that whole sort of thing. So that was fun too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think sometimes, again, almost like this example you just talked about with the woman, saying, oh, you didn't say hi to me in the parking lot. Well, sometimes we take things personally when we really don't need to. Right. And especially in the workplace, this happens a lot. Oh. And so we just need to, kind of chill the fuck out a little bit and just go with it. Right. And that'll actually reduce a lot of the conflict that's around us.
Yeah, and sometimes, and we talked about this in the Dealing with the Negative People episode, is some people just thrive on that drama. They want that chaos that makes them feel good about themselves. They feel better about themselves when they talk poorly about other people and blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of stepping out of that drama triangle, stepping out of that circle of chaos and saying, no, I'm not going to put up with that. It's about boundaries, values. I mean, it's all coming, once again, everything is just so intertwined with what we're talking about. So yeah, that was a fun episode. She was great.
Yep.
Oh, Kevin Grossman. Oh, this was so fun. Okay. They're all fun, but he talked a lot about recruiting and getting jobs and applications and how to navigate that process. So it was a little more technical episode, but for anybody who's hiring or looking to hire or who wants to be hired, it was a really great episode. What did you pull away from that one?
Yeah, so a lot of it, because the organization he works with focuses kind of on the candidate experience, right? So how the companies are dealing with the candidates as they come through, and just a lot of mistakes that people are making because actually, having or going through a bad hiring experience can also damage the reputation of the company, just like, anything else. So, and there's websites like Glassdoor and other stuff that are out there, but, if especially in today's transparent world, you got to be doing things right the whole time and actually improving the way that you deal with candidates, how you're hiring people, even if you're having to let people go, how you deal with them, the more respectful that you can be about it. And just the better it is overall for your individual company as well.
Yeah, and having that transparency and openness. I have a client who she makes 6 figures in tech. She's incredibly good at what she does. And I guess a recruiter from a not competing company, but another company in town contacted her and said, we want to talk to you about bringing you over. And she's like, look, I know 6 people that work for your company. They hate it. Why would I, because that reputation, especially in a small town and especially in a small industry, because she even said to me, she goes, I pretty much know every person in this field, in this town. I hear all the stories. I know what's not working. I know what's broken. I know what's falling apart. I know how they're letting people go. I know, so if you're the company owner looking at that reputation, and it's interesting because on Glassdoor, like you said, that you can write a review. It's like a Yelp review for how your job and what the job satisfaction is. And there's a couple companies here in town who used to have the best reputation. And I know people that work for them, and then also reading what's on Glassdoor is their reputation is going down the toilet because the management is so concerned about the bottom line. They're no longer thinking about their staffing and their employees. So Kevin talked a lot about that candidate experience. and about hiring and taking those positions. So that was again, technical, didn't necessarily apply to what I do because I don't have that kind of company. But when we deal with those companies, because you and I both go into corporations and we help them navigate this kind of thing. So that was a great episode. And then self-talk. Yeah.
Yeah. So self-talk, I mean, that episode kind of goes along with some of the other things that we were talking about, with, sometimes you're trying so hard to stay positive, then somebody kind of brings you down with their negativity. So, again, using self-talk, gratitude to try to help you make a different meaning out of it, create a different story, and kind of get past that. Again, use those boundaries, use whatever else you need to try to stay away from the negativity. But sometimes the negativity is our friends and family, and ultimately, sometimes you can, do kind of a timeout and say, well, I'm just not going to hang out with that person. But it's a little more difficult if it's a, partner, spouse, child,
or if it's in your own head.
Or if it's in your own head.
I mean, and that's what the whole self-talk thing is, it goes back to those stories and those affirmations. What story am I telling myself? What talk am I telling myself? And they've done so many amazing studies about affirmations and self-talk and how and they typically look at that through sports performance because it's easily measurable. But, throwing darts, I get a bullseye, I get a bullseye, I get a bullseye before you throw it. You get better results. And if you say, I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I can't do this. It's just our body responds in a way to that input. So to the extent that you can, and so many of our guests, and both you and I have talked about this multiple times, of keeping that self-talk positive. What are those stories that you're telling yourself? And that's pivotal to accomplishing what you want and unleashing and unlocking that full potential.
Yep, it is.
Woohoo,
well, and then we get into self-confidence and self-defense. Hey, Terry Coffee McDuffie on, and she's a badass.
She's a total badass.
She's a total badass. So yeah, I mean, Terry, I think you've actually taken some classes from her as well. Right?
I did take her. She teaches, she runs Santa Barbara Women's Self-Defense, and she teaches women and young girls to defend themselves. And it starts with that confidence, and it starts with that knowing who you are and how you carry yourself. And, you might be thinking, what does it have to do with business? Well, one, if you're not feeling safe, you're not going to be as productive, you're not going to be as happy, you're not going to accomplish as much. But also, whether you're a male or a female, this is a weird world, and you never know when shit's going to happen. So knowing how to defend yourself, not only physically, but also verbally and emotionally, whether you're surrounded by emotional vampires who want to suck the life out of you, or you're actually surrounded by somebody who could physically harm you, having that feeling of safety and having that self-confidence to say no, that's huge. That's huge. And I love the fact that she's getting to women and young girls and teaching them that, because I think it's, my dad taught me how to defend myself, because I was daddy's little girl and I was an only child and he wanted a boy and got me. So I knew how to punch before half the boys in my neighborhood didn't have to use it. But it's a kind of a scary world to navigate there. And one of the first things she talked about is listening to your instincts. And how do you feel in this situation? And I think whether that's business or not, because how often have we been offered a job or we've met a new staff person and we kind of have that feeling, listen to those instincts. We have those for a reason. And I think especially guys so often don't listen to that sixth sense and, we're the psychic ones and but we all have that sense. We all have the ability to tap into that. I think that's really what the root of what she was talking about was.
Well, and I like too the whole self-confidence side of it, because again, it's giving people self-confidence by teaching them self-defense, is one thing, but just self-confidence in general. And again, this is kind of a common theme that you're hearing through a lot of these episodes is the more confident we can be, because actually the self-hypnosis session that I went through this morning was actually about confidence, and so part of it was, think of a time when you felt very confident, that you felt, like you were on top of the world, that you could accomplish anything. And so we're thinking about that. Yeah. Now think about what you want in the future and apply that same feeling that you had back then to the future. Yeah. And there's a lot of power in being confident.
Yes.
It's totally changes, other people's reactions. It's totally different in the way that you show up in your being, right? Yes. Because if you are confident in your future self being, then you're going to be that person more often. So
yes. You can change, you can put on whatever hat you want. You can be whoever you want to be in that moment. I know we talked, that's a future episode. We talked about that with the ego states with Mike Mandel. That's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Okay. So we've got our self-defense. We're ready to kick ass. And now we talk to Hallie Avolio.
Avolio. I just like to say that.
I know you do. I should have. I stole your Avolio thunder there. Yeah. And she has the Sassy Healthy Fit, Healthy AF podcast, and she was incredible. We talked about not being a victim and being your own hero and being basically kind of your own superhero. So yeah, she was incredible. She's a very dear friend. She's also in Santa Barbara, tapping all my local talent here. But yeah, I mean, that was a really fun episode. I know you really seem to enjoy that one with her.
Well, yeah, because I think, so much of the time we get into victim mode. We feel like, oh, I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. Oh, this whatever is holding me back. Oh, and so we start trying to blame all of these things and end up becoming this victim. We're not getting the results that we want because we're just kind of complaining and making excuses versus saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to move into my superhero ego, right? And actually take control of it and not try to find an excuse, but go out and have the courage, because that's I think one of the big things too is that it takes courage to be a hero. And so when you think about whether it's superhero movies or what I kind of like the term, and I love stories like this where it's ordinary people doing extraordinary things. People that do heroic things. It's just some normal Joe or Jane, but they get put in a situation, they have courage, and they become a hero for that particular thing, right? I mean, you obviously, like military is a very easy one, where it's like, the little scrawny kid, all of a sudden, something happens and he drags 50 people out, in the line of fire. He goes in and pulls all these people out. And well, it takes a lot of courage to do that because you're putting yourself in harm's way. Maybe it's uncomfortable. Maybe you're saying things you're worried about how people are going to react or how they're going to view you. But it's having that courage is one of the things that makes a hero. So if you want to be a hero, you got to have more courage, and you actually got to do the things that are courageous.
And to me, being a hero is about taking action, and whether it's smiling at somebody or saying you look nice, or sometimes, I mean, we never know what anybody's going through. So sometimes just holding that door for somebody and saying, thank you, or you look really nice today. Or, sometimes you could be a hero in their eyes just because you lit them up enough that it made a shift in their perspective. It made a shift in their emotional state. So you don't have to drag a bunch of bodies off a battlefield to be a hero.
No, you don't.
But sometimes it's those little things, and you never know how that's going to affect another person. So I know we talked a lot about that. And then we talked about The Simpsons.
The Simpsons.
And Jason Lynette, who is another hypnosis friend of mine. Like I said, I'm tapping all of my resources. I'm going to run out of friends soon. They're going to
you won't run out of friends. But I mean, Jason's an amazing, he's a big guy in the hypnosis community.
Yes.
I mean, we've had some pretty big hitters. We're going to talk about a really big one here in a little bit too, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, just, great. And I know one of the things, that Jason was offering too, that in the links in the show notes, that he was giving away a free 15-minute self-hypnosis session, right? As well, that you can download as well. But yeah, it was, I think if I remember right, the business lesson too, right, from The Simpsons was, you may know me as the blah, 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 right? And just how he's started, kind of incorporating that in, and it really kind of goes into some of the stuff that, I've heard about infusion selling and some other stuff where you're actually, using some of these suggestions. Not surprising a hypnotist would do this,
right.
But some suggestions to help kind of tee up and kind of let people know or hit their subconscious, to where they're like, oh yeah, that's right. I do know Kathy from the TED Talk or whatever. Right.
Right. And I was just gonna say, Jason, a TEDxer. So
he's a TEDxer too.
Yeah, it was fun too. Yeah, Jason's amazing. His stuff is all of his stuff is incredible. And then we moved on to my alter ego.
Your alter ego?
Snow White.
Snow White.
My vulnerable, happy,
You do
loving.
play with the scrub jay in the morning, right?
Every morning.
Yeah.
He's out there every morning now squawking at me like,
Come on, girl. Where's my food? Where's my
"Here's
food?
my peanut." Yeah. So I had done a coaching workshop and we were tapping into, no pun intended, those other aspects of our personality that the people wanted to see. So everybody was like, "Oh, you're a badass and you accomplish things and you're no nonsense. You don't take bullshit and you call people on their stuff. We'd like to see your more sensitive, vulnerable side." And so for the rest of that day, I had to be Snow White and I had to do a coaching session like that. And it actually ended up turning out kind of fun, looking at the seven dwarfs and the witch and all this stuff. So it was not only looking at metaphor, which was part of the aspect of the coaching thing, but also tapping into those parts of your personality that people might not see, which leads us right into the last episode we're going to talk about, which is Mike Mandel. He's one of my favorite people. I love Mike. And he talked about ego states. And, there's different aspects of ourselves. And what did he say? We had between like 75 and 120 different ego states that we can call on. That are
because I can't remember. I think the average, because I did the same thing that you did, and I downloaded at least one of the books. Can't remember the man's name right now off the top of my head. Okay, that he had referred to, and I started reading the book, and in there I think he was talking about normal people usually have at least 5 to 15, maybe more. But there are all of these different ego states, and those are probably the ones that are more present. Mike talked about some of the ones that were in the cellar that just don't come out for a while. Some of those are a little scarier. There's trauma and other stuff associated with them that we have to deal with. But the whole idea, again, that just like with Snow White, there are different ego states within us because, if you notice, certain times you show up as one kind of person, other times you show up as a different kind of person.
Totally.
And it really kind of taps into, what's been discussed now as some of this ego state, which is not the same as ego as Freud talked about, kind of like the 3 ego states that Freud talked about. This is a little bit different, and actually kind of comes on and has been work after Freud to kind of improve upon some of this stuff. But just, some of the amazing stuff that Mike has done, because he shared with us a few examples of, some of the work that he's done with clients and actually using tapping as well as ego state work to actually kind of heal some of the ego states and realize which ego state needs to show up.
Correct. Yeah, and it's like you don't want, I was at the trapeze rig the other day, and one of the guys that owns the rig is about to do this talk about fear, and so he and I were bouncing ideas off each other. And the guy I'm dating was there, because he was there. And with him, I'm a little kid, real goofy, and he saw the brain does that. I put on like lecture hat, PhD Kathy, and I was talking to this other person about this talk that he was about to give, and you could see the guy that I was dating who's used to this just like goofy, like immature Kathy kind of sitting there going, who the hell's that? Very different, my voice changes and my attitude changes, and I know when to bring on it's lecture Kathy time. And when I'm doing funny stuff, I don't want lecture Kathy. And Mike actually talked about that, how he got up to do a stage hypnosis show, and it wasn't fun showman Mike, it was lecture Mike. And though he did the same lines and the same things, it wasn't fun and carefree. It was very teachy. The wrong person showed up to that. And I don't want lecture Kathy to show up on a date. I want fun, playful Kathy to show up on a date, because that's boring, So it's like, who is coming to that event? Who is coming to that thing? And wow, that was a long but quick recap of everything we've done in the last how many months. Whew, I'm exhausted.
I know. So 50 episodes also means we've been doing this for over a year. Yeah, and another one. There we go. Right. But yeah, I hope, hopefully, again, as people are listening through this, our real goal here is to help people unlock their potential, live the best life that you can, not let things hold you back. But really, step into that person who you want to be, have the success that you want to have, love the people around you, love yourself. And that's why we're here. That's why we do this. And we have one of these things come out every single week, is because, this is important. We think it's important. That's why we're doing it. And, again, you can see some of the common themes. You're going to see some of these same things coming forward the next year and the year after that as well, because we're probably still going to be talking about a lot of the same things.
Well, there's really only 4 things. I mean, that's like, everything kind of funnels back to that same thing, which is important to talk about, or else so many people wouldn't be talking about it. And it's fun for us to expose you guys all to so many different guests, because when are you going to be hearing about, Sarah Caputo and Jason Linett and Mike Mandel? And, unless you're in that field, you're probably not learning about them. So, this is why, or people who are completely unknown. I mean, Christina Donaldson, she's just a local psychologist, but she's brilliant with what she's doing. And we all have so many phenomenal ideas to share. And so that's, to me, one of the joys. I know I've kind of like just spearheaded this, let's have more guests, because they've touched me in a way. So it's like, I know that that's going to reach other people as well. So we just want to expose you guys to everything we possibly can, not only for our own learning, but also to help you unlock your limitless potential and be better in business and life and love and all that good stuff. So,
well, because what you brought up, brings up something that I was just listening to yesterday as a reminder that, a lot of times people think, oh, everything's already been done before, it's already been said before. But each of us individually has a unique perspective and a unique way of explaining or sharing or doing whatever.
Yep.
And so we all need to share with each other. And, so yeah, bringing these guests on, and hearing some of the same stuff, but from a different perspective and a different person's mouth,
yep.
sometimes really just kind of sinks in and makes the light bulb go off and go, oh, now I finally get it, right? I mean, I had one of those, if you go back and listen to I think it was the second episode with Peter, I had a huge like, boom, during the middle of that, that I shared on that episode as well. So it's our hope that all of you are having those kind of experiences as well.
Yeah. And depending on what headspace you're in, we are open to the same idea said a different way at a different time. So, I mean, it's like, I had a friend of mine like, I hate Brussels sprouts. And then he had my Brussels sprouts and he's like, oh my God, these are so good the way you prepared these. So sometimes it's just putting a little different spice on it, or if the mood you're in, or, I don't always want a hamburger, but when I do, how many different versions of a hamburger can I have? So it's about what you're ready for in that moment. So, okay, we've been talking for like an hour now, so we should probably.
We had a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, let's talk about today. Now we have to recap our recap. Go forth. Do good work. Love yourself, love others, don't be an asshole. That's pretty much my motto. I mean, it really is. Go for what you want and be kind to other people.
And when you do, you'll unlock your potential. You'll really get the things in life that you want and you need. And like you said, love is one of those things that we all need. And, the more you treat other people well, the more you treat yourself well, the more love you'll feel and the more that you'll actually give out in the world as well.
Yeah. So stay connected with us, with others. Tell everybody about this podcast. We'd love to have more viewers, listeners, because we're sharing so much great stuff. So share that with others. I'm Kathy Groover. I can be reached at kathygroover.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So we'll see you on a future episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. Take care.
See ya.